Number 10. Macrodactyly. Macrodactyly is defined by abnormally large fingers and toes, caused by an overgrowth of bone and soft tissue. It's something people are born with and usually occurs in one hand or foot, with the oversized appendage getting even bigger as the person grows. That means even as adults, they'll have mismatched hands or feet with distressing results. Nobody knows what causes the condition, which is not hereditary and does not result from the mother's habits during pregnancy. Theories point towards an abnormal blood supply or defective nerves, but there's no solid proof to back any of these claims. While macrodactyly is considered benign, having a massive couple of fingers or toes can be pretty detrimental to someone's quality of life. Consider, for example, Lia Hua, a man who was once known for having the world's largest hand. When he was hospitalized in 2007, his left index finger measured nearly a foot or 30 centimeters long, and his middle finger was around 6 inches or 15 centimeters long. The man's entire left arm weighed roughly 22 pounds or 10 kilograms. By the time he turned 24, Hua's gargantuan fingers had finally stopped growing, qualifying him for corrective plastic surgery. He underwent a 7-hour operation to reduce the size of his fingers and thumb. During the procedure, surgeons removed 11 pounds, more than 5 kilograms of flesh and bone. He wasn't done though. He later had to undergo a second operation to reshape his arm and shoulder. It may be fascinating to look at a person like this, but everyone should appreciate how difficult his life must be with that sort of deformative condition. Number 9. Diprosipus. Sometimes an otherwise normal-looking baby is born with 2 faces, with the extra face being either partial or complete. Known as Diprosipus, which is Greek for 2 faces, the condition is considered the result of conjoined twinning and is caused by a protein called SHH, which affects the formation of the embryo's face and skull in the womb. There's no two ways about it. These children do look strange, but we should be sensitive since they didn't choose to be born with duplicate features. There are even occasional reports of extra pupils in the eyes of children born with the rare genetic duplication disorders, but these are unconfirmed by the majority of doctors. 1 in every 180,000 to 15 million live births result in this condition, which is known to occur in tandem with other congenital disorders, such as anencephaly, which is when a major portion of the brain is missing, neural tube defects, and heart malformations. Most people with Diprosipus are stillborn. In fact, there are only a handful of recorded instances of humans surviving more than minutes past birth with the condition. One of the most famous faces of Diprosipus is a boy from Missouri named Trey Johnson. Doctors were sure that he would not live long after birth, but Trey defied the odds and made headlines in 2021 when he turned 17 years old, which is unheard of for someone with his ailment. While it's unknown how long Trey will live, he's already proven to be nothing short of a miracle for surviving as long as he has. Number 8. Progeria. Throughout the world, 1 out of every 8 million children is born with progeria, a debilitating condition that causes children to age far before their time. Also called Hutchinson-Gilford syndrome, this extremely rare genetic disorder becomes evident by the time the child is 2 years old. Most kids with progeria die at around 13 years old, although some live into their 20s, and they usually pass away from a heart attack or a stroke, conditions that typically affect people much older than them. Caused by a genetic mutation affecting the protein that supports a cell's nucleus, progeria is characterized by symptoms like baldness, a disproportionately large head with a small face, bone abnormalities, and growth impairment. Sadly, there is no cure for this condition, which is rarely hereditary but instead tends to appear randomly. Parents who have a child with progeria are highly unlikely to have another who suffers from it. Genetics experts hope to learn more about the connection between DNA and the aging process by studying this mystifying ailment. Number 7. Hypertrochosis. Nicknamed werewolf syndrome, hypertrichosis is an extremely rare condition that involves excess body and facial hair growth. It affects both men and women, but only 1 in a billion people have it. Only 50 cases have ever been documented since the Middle Ages, making this one of the rarest conditions ever. Hypertrichosis can be present at birth or appear over time, and it occurs in two different forms. Generalized hypertrichosis affects the whole body, while localized hypertrichosis only occurs in a certain area. There's also congenital hypertrichosis, which is genetic, and acquired hypertrichosis, which is caused by certain medications. Acquired hypertrichosis can usually be reversed by stopping the use of whatever medication is causing it, but there's no cure for the congenital version of this disorder, leaving the sufferer with no choice but to either live with the excess hair or spend copious amounts of time and effort removing it. Sadly, the effects of this condition are mostly psychological. A person can certainly live with having hair in unusual places, but the appearance that comes with hypertrichosis often leads to social isolation, alienation, and bullying, leaving deep emotional scars and trauma. Unable to blend in with mainstream society, people with werewolf syndrome have occasionally found work in circus sideshows in the past, though they probably wouldn't consider that to be a particularly glamorous or enjoyable life. Number 6. Unatan Syndrome. Proposed by Turkish evolutionary biologist Unatan in 2005, Unatan Syndrome is a controversial condition that allegedly causes humans to walk on all fours and exhibit noticeably primate-like behaviors, as well as impaired cognitive function. Tan's suggestions came after he observed the Ulas family, who used primitive speech, suffered from a congenital brain disability, and walk with quadrupedal locomotion, in other words, on all fours. People with this condition also tend to have a diminished perception of space and time, and are unable to communicate effectively. Unatan boldly claimed that the syndrome represents a backward step in evolution. A 2010 study found that people who suffer from the condition tend to be from incestuous families, indicating that Unatan syndrome is passed on through a recessive gene. But the scientists who performed the research admitted that there may not be one single causal factor. It's also possible that different combinations of genetic flaws manifest as Unatan syndrome. But without knowing exactly what causes it, it's extremely difficult for professionals to detect and diagnose. Moreover, more research is necessary for experts to learn how to best treat the condition. What do you think is behind Unatan syndrome? Could it be a step backwards in human evolution, or is it caused by exposure to toxic chemicals, or something else entirely? Let me know your thoughts in the comments below, then remember to subscribe to Talltanic for more intense videos if you haven't subscribed already. Number 5. Epidermodysplasia verruciformis. Also known as tree man syndrome, this strange illness is a hereditary skin disorder that makes a person highly susceptible to human papilloma, HPV, infections, which look like tree bark growing from the body, particularly on the hands, feet, and other areas that are most exposed to the sun. Eventually, the sufferer becomes covered in the warts and scaly growths. Symptoms typically emerge for the first time between the ages of 20 and 40, according to Gizmodo. There's no known cure for tree man syndrome, and the world at large didn't know about it until 2007, when footage detailing the life of a 32-year-old Indonesian man named Dede Kazwara surfaced online. After first experiencing symptoms as a teenager, Dede lost his job, his wife left him, and he was increasingly alienated by his neighbors and society in general. In 2008, he underwent surgery to remove 13 pounds or 6 kilograms of his growths in hopes of living a better life. Rahmat Denata, the doctor who performed the surgery, told the Los Angeles Times that Dede would never be fully cured, but that he could now enjoy some semblance of normalcy. The man was able to do things he couldn't do before, including many tasks we take for granted every day that require the use of our hands, like eating, writing, and using a cell phone. Before the surgery, Dede had been admitted to the hospital with a lung infection caused by the growths, indicating that it was time to do something about his affliction. Sadly, the effects of tree man syndrome ultimately caused more health problems, which claimed Dede's life in 2016. He was just 44 years old. Number 4. Ectrodactyly. A person who suffers from ectrodactyly, also called split hand, split foot malformation, SHFM, or cleft hand or foot, is typically missing one or more of their middle digits on their hand and or feet. This congenital disorder affects the development of these appendages, leaving those afflicted with claw-like feet and hands that often contain just one thumb and one finger, hence the condition's nickname, lobster claw syndrome. In addition to an array of rare limb deformities, ectrodactyly often comes with hearing loss. The condition is caused by several factors associated with chromosome 7, but it's not fully understood by experts. While there are certainly setbacks to having ectrodactyly, in many cases people can live at least relatively normal lives. Take, for instance, actress and former television anchor Bree Walker, who appeared on Nip Tuck. She has enjoyed a successful career despite any obstacles she faces due to having ectrodactyly. But, as Walker knows, the condition can be passed down from parents to their children. She still had 2 kids, knowing about the 50-50 chance that this would happen, and both children were born with ectrodactyly. Some people criticized Walker's decision to become a mother because of the deformity's hereditary tendencies, but she defended her choice both in real life and on screen, when she played a character who said, "Ultimately, I decided they have every right to be here and to be different." And she has a perfectly valid point. In some cases, medical experts have even managed to correct the deformities well enough to defeat its hindering effects. Boston-based plastic surgeon Dr. Joseph Upton made a groundbreaking accomplishment in this regard when he replaced some of the missing fingers of a pair of 2-year-old girls with some of their toes, creating thumbs that had some movement and sensation, greatly enhancing their quality of life. Number 3. Trimethylamineuria. It's unknown how many people suffer from trimethylamineuria, an astonishingly rare condition that renders the body incapable of breaking down the pungent-smelling chemical compound trimethylamine. As a result, the individual emanates an odor that's been described as resembling rotting fish, rotten eggs, garbage, or urine. That's right, they have incredibly horrifying body odor, and there's nothing they can do to stop it. Just be grateful it isn't you, and be kind if you ever meet a person with this. The smell results from the buildup of trimethylamine in the person's body, which causes it to seep out of their sweat, urine, and breath. For obvious reasons, the condition tends to affect an individual's life in almost every way imaginable, including their relationships, job, and social life, often leading to isolation and depression. Trimethylamineuria is caused by mutations in the FMO3 gene, which provides the instructions for breaking down trimethylamine. Produced by intestinal bacteria when the body digests eggs, liver, fish, and legume proteins, trimethylamine is typically converted into an odorless compound. But without the proper genes for it, a person has no choice but to live with the odorific results. Scientists are still learning about this extremely seldom seen condition, but they believe that it is mostly hereditary, and that it's passed down by 2 parents who both possess the genetic mutation associated with trimethylamineuria. It can also be caused by an excess of certain proteins in someone's diet, an abnormal increase in bacteria that produce trimethylamine, and by kidney or liver disease. The severity of symptoms varies, with some individuals giving off a slight odor, with others struggling with a stronger smell. Researchers believe that stress exacerbates the symptoms. Number 2. Fatal familial insomnia. The rare degenerative brain disorder is one of the most terrifying diseases a person can have. Also known as fatal familial insomnia, FFI, it often starts with mild difficulties falling and staying asleep. Other symptoms include double vision, involuntary eye movements, tremors, slurred speech, and difficulty swallowing. A true sufferer of the condition will experience progressively worsening physical and mental symptoms that eventually lead to death. During the disease's progression, a person's nervous system will likely endure a disruption of involuntary functions, like regulating body temperature and heart rate, as well as sweating and breathing. What little sleep a sufferer does get is often accompanied by extremely lucid dreams. Sleep deprivation takes a devastating toll on the human mind and body, eventually leading to coma and death. The initial insomnia often begins when an individual is middle-aged, but can happen earlier or later on in life, and is followed by the person getting almost no sleep, with the condition typically worsening dramatically over a months-long period. An abnormal variant in the prion-related protein, or PRPN gene, is almost always what causes FFI, although the condition also occurs randomly according to the National Organization of Rare Disorders. The resulting abnormally shaped proteins are toxic, and they accumulate within the thalamus of the brain, resulting in the progressive loss of nerve cells and the symptoms that go along with it. Sleeping pills won't help, and people who suffer from this disease are left to suffer as their brains stop being able to repair themselves. Sadly, there is no cure for FFI. Researchers are currently working to figure out how to best treat and manage the condition. Number 1. Polymelia. Humans and animals can be affected by polymelia, or excess limbs. In most cases of people, an individual with the condition has at least 5 limbs, and the extra limbs are usually deformed or shrunken. This sometimes happens as a result of an embryo that started as conjoined twins, one of which degenerated, leaving only their partially developed limbs behind. One extreme form of the condition, known as Diprosipus deformity, occurs when the body's lower abdomen forks, usually resulting in 2 sets of legs and 2 pelvises. There are other types of polymelia, including cephalomelia, which is characterized by an extra limb protruding from the head, pyromelia, an extra limb attached to the pelvis, thoracomelia, an extra limb in the midsection, and notomelia, an extra limb attached to the back. Genetic factors such as mutations and improper cell division can cause polymelia. Exposure during pregnancy to dangerous infectious and chemical agents and medications can also lead to the condition. Polymelia is almost always detectable before birth through ultrasounds, and in some cases can be treated through orthopedic surgery, removing the extra limbs. Thanks for watching. If you want to learn more about shocking genetic mutations and diseases, let me know in the comments below, and be sure to subscribe. See you next time, right here on Talltanic.